and unrestricted digital communication during crisis outweigh the benefits. The government's primary responsibility during unrest is to protect lives, to maintain public order, to prevent escalation of violence. When social media actively undermines these goals temporarily, temporary restrictions uh, can be taken to bring back order, and some of our arguments include this. One, social media rapidly escalates violence. And how does this happen? Social media amplifies unrest, and this enables instant mobilization, misinformation, and emotional con- contagion. Secondly, we shall also be speaking about how um, not doing this, allowing the governments to do this will prevent misinformation and mass panic. Then we're also going to talk about how um, allowing the governments to be able to do this is going to protect vulnerable groups and national stability. Going back to talk about how the social media rapidly escalates violence, social media amplifies unrest by enabling instant mobilization, misinformation, and emotional contagion. False rumors, for example, police are attacking civilians, spread faster than fact checking. Viral posts provoke a panic, anger, and retaliation. Violent actors use platforms to coordinate riots, looting, and attack in real time. With this, protests turn violent more quickly. Security forces lose control of situation, and innocent civilians are harmed. Shutting down social media breaks the speed and scale of escalation. And then also going to talk a little bit more about the way it is going to prevent misinformation and mass panic. During unrest, people rely heavily on unverified online information. Algorithms prioritize emotional extreme content, fake images, and then we also look at the fact that fake images, edited videos, and false death counts spread rapidly. Panic-driven crowds make irrational decisions, and as a result, stampedes, vigilantism, and then we also see that there is also ethnic targeting, and mob justice increases. In the end, government responses become harder and slower. A shutdown forces reliance on official centralized communication, and this reduces chaos. Then also to talk a little bit more about the way it is going to protect vulnerable groups and national stability. We see that social media disappropriately harms minorities and weakens institutions during unrest. Online hate speech targets ethnic or political groups. That's one thing that we all know for sure. And foreign actors can exploit unrest through digital propaganda. Calls for overthrow or violence calculate unchecked. I beg your pardon. Circulate unchecked. This can lead to communal violence escalating. Trust in. I rest my case. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to ask again because I came in late. How many minutes do I have? Okay. All right. I begin in three, two, one. This house would allow the government to shut down all social media during times of public unrest. Now, upon what are we looking at? We're looking at a situation where something is happening somewhere due to maybe mobilization and whatsoever, and people are supposed to be informed about this. We find when there is public unrest, a lot of misinformation know that is the best way to solve a problem is through effective communication. So how do we communicate? We look at the percentage of people right now. Most like 90% of citizens in Uganda, be it less than like below 18 or above 18, they all have smartphone, they have access to social media, things like Facebook, WhatsApp, and whatsoever, they have access. So the best way to spread information to these people is by using social media. Now if we end up shutting down the social media, how will information reach these people saying that this is right and this is wrong? So one thing we should know is that the importance and the benefits of social media not being shut down during public unrest is greater than it's like being shut down. Now, the first speaker from affirmative side comes and tells us that the government, they will allow the government to shut down social media because they are trying to promote rights, or people are trying to promote like rights, because when there is public unrest you find there is chaos and whatsoever. And do we know that by also shutting down social media we are also abusing rights of people, because there is right, there's supposed to be right to communication. So if we don't, like if we shut down the social media, we're going to see that people's rights will not be upheld. How will someone pass information to other people? Like for example, you're caught up in a chaos caused by public unrest, how will you be able to send information maybe to the police, maybe to the what? Because we find the traditional media like newspapers and whatsoever, they take a lot of time to reach people. You find even 30% I think of Ugandans only read newspaper. People are always relied on their phones. So how will someone be able to reach easily to the police or to relatives for rescue during public arrest? And it's going to be the social media to help us in that way. And he also said mobilization, it will like help to mobilize people to come and like to find a lot of other ways to fit into to continue with the chaos and whatsoever. And we also find it's the same social media when something is happening, as I say, to pass information somewhere. When there's a lot of public unrest, of course, when there's chaos somewhere, how do you inform people? Is it not using social media? We need social media because it really helps us a lot to solve problems in a very easy way. Now coming to what we are basing at, we as Team Negative is saying that social media should not be shut down. And this is how we're basing our arguments. We're saying that it violates freedom for expression, and then it hides government's wrongdoings. It hurts emergency communication, and it causes ineffective and easily bypassed communication. Now, let me talk about violating freedom for expression. You find something is happening. For example, they looking at 2025, we saw that there was internal party unrest in Mubende district, whereby the youth of National Unity Platform were trying to fight for their rights because they saw their party was being suppressed, their voices were not taken. So they tried all their best to see that their party was being considered in Mubende district. But now the police came in trying to fight them, arresting them for things they don't know. And you know, the police, when they get on TV, that is what they do. They say the youth did this, that is why we did this. But because of social media, because people are able to take videos and whatsoever and post on platforms, people are able to see what really happened during the chaos. So you find this sends out information even to people who are outside the country to be able to know what is happening in the country, so that they start fighting for the rights of maybe National Unity Platform for wherever they are. If there was no social media, that means this would have been this would have been just closed there. The police would have won over something which is not happening. And then also speaking about hiding government's wrongdoings, and we're coming back to human rights. We find that most of the public unrest that takes place, for example, in Uganda, you find that police do whatever they want to the youth and they don't care about it. But now, when you shut down the social media, we as the people will not know, because the only people who are given chance on TV are the police to come and speak. But when you give right for social media to operate during such like cases, you find that we get a lot of benefit and we'll be able to understand. Arrest my case.
Okay, thank you guys. I start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm the second speaker from the affirming side. Here comes the first affirmer talking about like if someone is involved in public unrest, how are you going to communicate with the police? Mind you, young lady, um, what we are saying is it is going to what? We are only shutting down social media and it's temporary. You're asking if social media is closed, how is this person going to to what? To communicate with the police in case of emergencies. Yeah, we agree. People need social media for information. And as it is going to be shut down, not okay, all social media are going to be banned, of course, but we have official channels, radios, TVs, SMS, and emergency alerts will remain. They will obviously remain. We are not going to take them away. Um, yeah. Then I'm going to go back to explain more on our first point, which was social media rapidly escalates violence. Um, as we said earlier, our first speaker talked about it. Then we have slows the speed of misinformation. During times of public unrest, false rumors spread extremely fast, especially on social media platforms. We have an example is like during the 2019 protest in Uganda, due to fuel hikes, false information spread on social media that armed forces were shooting and it led to panic of people which caused more harm to other people. People who are not even involved in it, people who never knew what was going on, they were harmed because of this false information. What we are doing is we are not trying to deny the rights of people, but we are trying to help other people become safe. As you guys always, you're here talking denial of human rights, so and so. But if we look closely here, what we're trying to do, we're not denying your rights, of course. It's just for a short period of time until the unrest is settled. We want to ensure safety of other people because human rights organizations lack operational responsibility. They do not manage the rights or security. They don't. And if we leave it onto their hands, people are going to keep on getting injured. Someone who never knew what was going on is going to get badly harmed. And you're asking, like, how are we going to give proper information? We still have official channels and the radios which are going to be used. And during that time, you say most people use social media. But before social media came, we still had the radios, the TVs on the official channels. So by just banning the social media for a short period of time, of course they're going to go back because the days of nowadays, they don't like staying just like that. They're always going to look for something. Obviously, they're going to go back to the old days. They're going to start listening to radios. They're going to go back to official channels and on TVs because you still want to get information. That is how they're going to get the information. I would also like to what it says that we're silencing protest voices. No, we're not. The goal is not to silence them, but it is to prevent violence. As long as this violence has been stopped, the ban is going to be uplifted and peaceful protests can resume once safety is restored. That is what we're trying to do. We're trying to ensure safety of others, not harm. We don't want to harm anyone, nor do we want to deny their rights. We just want them to be safe. That is what we're actually trying to do here. Then one of our points was also protecting vulnerable groups of people and maintaining national stability. Yeah. How you're going to ask us? Social media disproportionately harms minorities and weakens state institutions during unrest. Online hate speech targets ethnic or political groups. Um, so the main reasons why we're actually having this ban is because we want to protect the lives of the citizens. We want to maintain the public order. We want to prevent escalation of violence and harm of others. When social media actively undermines this goal temporarily, restriction is justified under the harm prevention principle. I rest my case.
Okay. Good evening. I hope everyone can get me. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay. The pre-current speaker came here and said shutting down of social media platforms and violating people's rights. But like by shutting them, like people have the right to expression, like the freedom to expression of whatever they have in mind. So by shutting down these platforms, even for the small time that you think you're going to shut them for, don't you think you're already violating the people's rights? And then you also talked of you also talked of actually um, actually radios and newspapers not being social media social media platforms. But according to my research, I found out that actually radios and newspapers are the traditional. They were the ones which they were used before the current ones came on board. So the, according to me, all those are social media platforms. And then talking about like shutting down the social media platforms, like for the short time that you're going to shut them, don't you think that what if, like for example, if something like a military strike is to happen, how will the people be informed? If something is to happen, how will they be informed? Because by the moment you shut down these platforms, it's going to be hard for these people to get whatever, for the citizens to get the information. So I don't think shutting down the social media platforms is going to be actually a case of resolving the problems that actually the interests of the citizens. So coming to my points, I'm going to talk about ineffective, actually ineffective running of information. Like for example, most of the most of you find that we are currently in the digitalized world, but many of the things actually that we do are done digitally. For example, the online shopping, and other things. So when you actually, okay, pardon, let me say this. Okay, these social media platforms are helping us in different ways, like doing online business and learning, education. We have the even the health sectors. It helps a lot, and so by shutting down this one these social media platforms, what do you think will come, like how will it not cost the country a lot? For example, people who have to do learning on Zoom, and people who are doing businesses like the Jumia or whatever, don't you think it's going to affect them? It is actually going to cost a lot. So it will cause some ineffectiveness in running of whatever the country is doing. And then there is also, it has emergency communication. For example, when, as I said before, when something is to happen in the country, like a strike or or some conflict, how will the people be informed? Because once these social media platforms are sad, you find that people will not get information. For example, when the strike happens and people are not getting access to their phones and to their social media platforms, and the country, the president or the government is passing out information on how people are going to be rescued, how will the people get the information? It's going to be very hard. So shutting down these social media platforms is actually not the best thing to do, because even though for the smallest time that you think you are going to shut them for, it is going to cost the country a lot, because in that small time that you are shutting down the social media platforms, you are already risking people's lives in the country. And then to add on my first point, you find that also, even like when the people, like the people are supposed to be doing businesses and the social media platforms are shut down, then you find that the money that are supposed to earn is lost. Even it risks the country's this one economy. It damages the country's economy because the money that is supposed to come into the country is getting lost into other things. And by that, I rest my case.
Thank you. I believe everyone can hear me. I begin our last substantial speech in three, two, one. Your Honor, I want to start by reminding the August House about what we said as team affirmative from our first speaker. Your Honor, we said that in our case, as we are laying it down, we said that this is not a permanent ban, but not a suspension of all speech. We said traditional media, emergency lines, and official announcements still remain active, and that clearly deals with what Team Negating had actually brought on board, claiming that we're shutting down and we're stopping everything from operation. So I wanted to remind the August House that we are temporarily doing this. We are creating a ban, and we are still encouraging uh, communication through traditional media, emergency lines, and official announcements. Then I also wanted to remind the August House on our stand. We clearly stated that we stand that we as government we think that the government should be allowed to shut down social media during these times of public unrest because the harms caused by the unrestricted digital communication during crisis outweighs the benefits. We clearly told the August House that our objective is, as government, primarily is to protect lives in periods of such unrest. And we gave the August House our points such as defending our case, such as it protects vulnerable groups and it promotes national stability. Then we also talked about social media, which rapidly escalates our violence in our communities. We also talked about how it prevents misinformation and mass panic uh, that could be caused by circulation of false information in the public. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to close the case for the government, we must look at the reality of modern conflict. That is to say, if any piece of information that is fake is leaked out through social media into the public, it could cause social public unrest, and of which foreign people could actually use for their personal gain. And that is what we have clearly tried to say here. We have said that we're using the temporary ban just to act as a signal to other people who would intentionally wanted to use the media, the social media, as a tool to create violence in society and cause public unrest in our society, to calm them down, and at the end of the day prioritize the rights of these people, because we're giving them an opportunity to use other forms of communication during this period of unrest, such as emergency lines, in case there's anything that arises and it needs to be handled. The emergency lines that these people could actually reach out to and pass out the information. At the same time, we want to neutralize violent moves that could arise due to fake information that could be circulated during the use of social media. We also say that this could also help to to encourage peaceful resolution of matters rather than digital wildfire that could result into chaos in society. So, for the sake of the public and the restoration of the rule of law, we think that this resolution should stand and Team Affirmative takes it home. I beg to submit, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Char. Not just Team Affirmative is looking at social media as a tool that will escalate violence, bring in misinformation,
mass panic, and cause political instability. We team affirmative are looking at social media as a platform that gives room for mass communication, like they said in the definition, and also seeing it as a tool that can be used for verification of information during times of political unrest. Yes, they did say that they're going to leave traditional media and other things, but you realize that the number of Ugandans that have access to this traditional media or to these other routes that they are, these other options that they are living is much more less compared to the larger number that has access to social media, like our first speaker clearly stated. So we think that it is not right for social media to be shut down at this moment. In some message, as I'm going to explain in my speech in the later times, they spoke of how it escalates violence and how there can be misinformation through social media leading to mass panic, and how there is need to protect vulnerable groups and political stability. And you realize that much as they're saying that it's going to prevent coordination of violence, we think it is also going to prevent coordination of emergency services and family safety, because you realize during such times people rely a lot on social media so that they can communicate with people that they are closely related to. They say that social media can be used to coordinate riots and violence, but you realize that the coordination of violence does not necessarily require social media, but you also realize that the coordination of emergency response does require social media. And you realize in Uganda many citizens use WhatsApp and this X, etc., and they use it to alert others of roadblocks, identify where security forces could be near, and by shutting down these apps or shutting down, the government isn't stopping rioters, but it is trapping like 99% of citizens in a kill zone, so where they cannot seek help or find safety. They spoke of misinformation and mass panic, that they need to stop misinformation. You also realize that shutting down is the greatest fuel for fake news. Why? Because people will depend on rumor. Since very few people have access to these other means that they are living, people are going to now depend on word of mouth. And you realize that if a rumor passes on from one person to another, the message can change, and unless people will begin to hear news that is not true, and it will cause even more panic, because there will be nothing that they can use to verify the information that they need. And also to say that yes, it's going to be for a few days only, but you realize that this temporary thing may have impact. Take for example, in just 5 days, Uganda lost like a lot of money, approximately 39 billion Uganda shares, because for Uganda small business owner who relies on Facebook, who relies on like online platforms, how much are you going to put this person in debt, something like that? For them, it may damage that person's confidence, the person who engages in such things. You also realize that global tech companies will not invest in a country that flips a switch, or in the operations when there's a political tension. What if it lasts longer? What will be the impact of it on our country? So we do not think it is a right thing for social media platforms to be shut down. We spoke of how it violates freedom of expression. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know together that in Uganda, in Article 29, every Ugandan has freedom of expression, and also realize that access to information is a fundamental right. Even the UN has declared that internet shutdowns are a violation of human rights because they are disappropriate. The case of unwanted witness versus like the case of an unwanted witness versus like an attorney general in Uganda challenged these shutdowns as unconstitutional, arguing that they deprive citizens for their right to lead a livelihood. And also you see that it hides government wrongdoing. How are we going to know the things that are happening in other places that are being done by the government? And social media provides us a platform for us to do this thing. So we do not think it is right, because social media, like we say, it creates room for mass communication so that we can get to know what is happening in our country. And we also see that this shutting down will also lead to a affect the economy of the country, because very many Ugandans rely on digital economy. For example, Safe Border Borders, junior vendors, small business owners on WhatsApp, and shutting down social media will affect all these people. And also we see that it has emergency communication, like of people and people that they're closely related with, because in such moments they rely on social media to connect with their relatives spread out throughout the country. And also you realize that it ineffective or easily bypass communication, because like these means that have been left may not be considered highly by so much people, because people will need verification. I rest my case. Okay.
Okay, Chair. The same social media that spreads wrong information is the same social media that is used to spread the right information. That is one thing we should understand. Of course, when there is public unrest, there is already wrong information being spread. Then how do you curb this information? You cannot tell me the wrong information has already gone and then you shut down the social media. Like something is happening in Masaka. I'm here in Arua. I've already heard that something is happening. Then you go ahead to shut this. How will I be able to know? A newspaper takes long days to reach me, and you know the percentage of Ugandans who read newspaper. Newspaper, I mean, in our homes, in our home areas, we know that. Now, Fabio comes in and tells you that when we shut down social media, it's going to affect the economy. We see online businesses that go on because there is social media, and then Divine also comes to tell you that Pillar, she comes to tell you that social media is used for commercialization. So if we shut down the social media, how are we going to help people who are attached to their businesses online, who don't have time to move out? Now imagine a public unrest takes 5 years. Are you going to keep this person 5 years? Like, you don't open, this person is going to stay like that. Try to come up again in these 5 years. Now Fabio also comes in and tells you that how do you promote rights by abusing rights? You're telling me proposition comes in and tells us that they are going to promote rights by starting that social media. Now we also came in, as the first speaker, I came in and told you that we are opening this social media. We are not allowing the government to shut it down because we are seeing at bringing out voices of people who are being abused during public unrest, people who are being beaten and so on. We want to promote rights, but we are not trying to abuse rights like Team Proposition is doing, saying that they are promoting rights. Now, social media at the same time, if Team Proposition comes in and tells us that before social media, they were what? They were traditional media. Now we find that they gave an example of 2021 students youth protests in 2021. So we're looking at the current issue, what is happening. We're looking at the current percentage that is using social media to finding that we spread the right information at the right time and in the fastest way to see that we are being helped. So we're saying as team opposition that social media should not be shut down, but rather other ways like criminalization and so on should be brought in to see that there is information being passed and people's rights are upheld. I submit.
Okay, first of all, I would like to remind the House and the judge that the negators introduced new agreements which were not in their first speaker's speech. Anyways, I move on to a reply speech. To close the case of the government, we must look at the reality of modern conflict. Information can be just as lethal as physical weapons. The opposition characterizes this as a hallmark of authoritarianism, but it is actually an act of state responsibility. When a building is on fire, we don't argue about the right to move freely. We clear the hole so the firefighters can do their jobs. A social media shutdown is that fire alarm. It is a temporary emergency measure designed to strip away the tools of coordination from those seeking to burn down this social fabric. We live in an era where a single deepfake or a viral life can result in a massacre before a fact checker can even log on. By implementing a digital curfew, the government prioritizes the right to live over the right to post, neutralizes the logistics of violent mobs, forces a de-escalation that allows for a peaceful physical resolution rather than a digital warfare. Rights are not a suicide pact. The government has the moral and legal obligation to hit the pause button on technology when that technology is being used to tear a nation apart for the sake of public safety and this restoration of the rule of the law. The motion must stand. I rest my case.
All right. So as Blinkton keeps giving us, as he keeps summarizing the whole debate, I'm thinking we should go back to what I had previously introduced and said before, that was introducing ourselves. You give us your name and where you're studying, just for the August house to know you. People are leaving. Okay, can we start with Ban?